Get your bags and get off this plane right now. We don't tolerate thieves in first class." The scream tore through the silence of the cabin, freezing every passenger on Flight 294. A 17-year-old girl sat stunned, juice dripping from her lap, where the flight attendant had, accidentally, knocked a glass moments before. The attendant, a woman named Brenda with a sneer carved into her face, thought she had the power. She thought she could humiliate a child and get away with it. But she didn't see the phone in the girl's hand. She didn't know that one single phone call was about to ground the entire fleet, end a career, and bring the CEO of the airline rushing to the tarmac. The automated glass doors of JFK Terminal 4 slid open, letting in a gust of humid July air mixed with the sharp, distinct scent of jet fuel and expensive cologne. Chloe Harrison adjusted the strap of her vintage leather backpack and took a deep breath. She was 17, with voluminous curls pulled back into a neat bun and wearing a simple, oversized beige hoodie over leggings. To the untrained eye, she looked like any other teenager navigating the chaos of summer travel. But Chloe wasn't just any teenager, and this wasn't just any trip. In her hand, she clutched a boarding pass for Crown Atlantic Airways, Flight 294 to London Heathrow. Seat 1A first class, it was a graduation gift, not from her parents, who were hard-working but modest middle-class folks living in Queens, but from her godfather, Marcus. Marcus was the kind of man who moved in shadows and boardrooms, a man whose name opened doors that remained locked for everyone else. He had sent the ticket via courier with a simple note. "The world is yours, kiddo. Start seeing it from the front of the plane." Chloe felt a knot of anxiety in her stomach. She had never flown first class before. Her family usually flew economy, crammed into the middle seats near the bathrooms, sharing a bag of pretzels 3 ways. Walking toward the dedicated first-class check-in line, she felt the weight of imposter syndrome pressing down on her shoulders. "Next," the agent at the counter called out, not even looking up from his screen. Chloe stepped forward, placing her passport and ticket on the cool marble counter. The agent, a man named Steve with tired eyes and a coffee stain on his tie, glanced at the documentation. He paused. He looked at the ticket, then at Chloe, then back at the ticket. "Seat 1A?" Steve asked, his eyebrows raising slightly. "You're traveling alone?" "Yes, sir," Chloe said, her voice polite and steady. "Just me." Steve typed something rapidly on his keyboard. The rhythmic clacking seemed to echo loudly in the quiet, carpeted zone of the premium check-in. "All right, Miss Harrison. Everything looks in order. You have access to the Diamond Lounge if you'd like to wait there before boarding." "Thank you," Chloe smiled, taking her boarding pass back. She turned to leave, feeling a surge of relief. That wasn't so bad. But as she walked away, she didn't notice the lingering stare of a woman standing near the baggage drop-off. The woman was dressed in the pristine, navy blue uniform of Crown Atlantic Airways. Her name tag read Brenda St. James, Senior In-Flight Manager. Brenda was 52 years old, and she wore her bitterness like a second skin. She had been flying for 30 years, and in her mind, the glamour of the skies had long since rotted away, replaced by entitled passengers, shrinking legroom, and union disputes. She watched Chloe walk toward security with narrowed eyes. "Unbelievable," Brenda muttered to a junior flight attendant, a nervous young man named Liam. "Did you see that?" "See what, Brenda?" Liam asked, adjusting his tie. "That kid," Brenda gestured with her chin toward Chloe's retreating figure. "Walking around with a Diamond class ticket. Probably used her parents' miles or stole it. Look at how she's dressed. Hoodies in first class? The standards have gone to hell." "Maybe she's famous?" Liam suggested, shrugging. "TikTok star or something." Brenda scoffed, a harsh, grating sound. Please. She looks like trouble. I can smell it. Mark my words, Liam. That one is going to be a headache. I'm not letting my cabin turn into a zoo today. Brenda grabbed her roller bag and marched toward the crew security lane, her heels clicking aggressively against the polished floor. She had already decided that today she was the law, and she didn't like the look of the defendant. Meanwhile, Chloe navigated security with ease and found herself in the Diamond Lounge. It was a different world. Soft jazz played from invisible speakers. There was a buffet of fresh salmon, artisan cheeses, and warm pastries. Businessmen in three-piece suits whispered into phones, discussing mergers and acquisitions. Chloe grabbed a sparkling water and found a quiet corner by the window, watching the massive Boeing 777 being prepped at the gate. She took a photo of the plane and texted it to her mom. "I made it. It's so fancy here. I feel like a spy." Her mom texted back instantly. "Enjoy it, baby. You earned those grades. Be polite. Be safe. Love you." Chloe smiled. She was determined to enjoy this. She pulled out her sketchbook. She was an aspiring fashion designer, headed to London for a summer intensive course at Central St. Martin's. This trip was her dream. When the boarding announcement finally came, Chloe waited until they called for first class and Diamond Club members. She gathered her things, her heart fluttering with excitement. She walked down the jet bridge, the cool air of the tunnel hitting her face. At the door of the aircraft, Brenda St. James was waiting. She stood like a sentry, her hands clasped in front of her, her smile tight, and failing to reach her cold, calculating eyes. "Welcome aboard," Brenda said mechanically to the man in front of Chloe. Then, Chloe stepped up. She held out her boarding pass. Brenda didn't take it immediately. She looked Chloe up and down, her gaze lingering on the hoodie, the sneakers, the natural hair. It was a look of pure, distilled judgment. "Boarding pass," Brenda said, her voice dropping an octave, losing all warmth. Chloe handed it over. Brenda squinted at it, tilting it toward the light as if looking for a forgery. "Seat 1A," Brenda read aloud, her tone dripping with skepticism. "This is the bulkhead seat, first class." "Yes, ma'am," Chloe said. "Are you sure you're in the right line, sweetie?" Brenda asked, leaning in slightly. "Economy boarding is in 20 minutes. Group 5. The condescension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Chloe felt her cheeks warm, but she remembered her mother's advice. Always keep your composure. "I'm sure," Chloe said firmly. "My ticket is for 1A. Brenda let out a short, sharp sigh through her nose. She handed the ticket back, shoving it slightly into Chloe's chest. "Right. Turn left. Don't block the aisle." Chloe moved past her, entering the first-class cabin. It was magnificent. Wide, lie-flat leather seats, massive entertainment screens, and a personal amenity kit waiting on the side table. Seat 1A was the best spot on the plane, offering total privacy. Chloe placed her backpack in the overhead bin. As she was struggling slightly to push it back, to make room for the closing mechanism, she felt a hand clamp over her wrist. She jumped and turned around. It was Brenda. "That bin is for paying first-class passengers only," Brenda hissed, her voice low so the other passengers wouldn't hear the venom, but loud enough to humiliate. "Crew equipment goes in here. Move your bag to row 10. "Row 10? Chloe frowned. "But that's back in premium economy. I'm sitting right here." "I need this space for emergency equipment," Brenda lied smoothly. "Move it. Now." Chloe looked around. The bin was clearly empty, aside from her bag, but she didn't want to start a fight before the plane even took off. "Okay," Chloe whispered. She took her bag down. "Can I just keep it under my seat?" "Not in the bulkhead. No underseat storage," Brenda snapped. "I'll take it." She snatched the expensive leather backpack from Chloe's hand. I'll find a spot for it in the back. Sit down and buckle up." Brenda marched away with Chloe's bag, which contained her sketchbook, her laptop, and her medication. Chloe sank into the plush leather seat, the excitement of the trip suddenly replaced by a cold dread. She felt small. She felt targeted, and the flight hadn't even left the gate yet. The boarding process continued, a steady stream of passengers filing past the first-class cabin toward the rear of the plane. Chloe tried to make herself invisible. She stared out the window, watching the baggage handlers toss suitcases onto the conveyor belt. She put her noise-cancelling headphones on, but she didn't play any music. She just wanted to dampen the sound of her own racing heart. Every time Brenda walked past the aisle, the air seemed to grow colder. Brenda was bustling about, serving pre-flight champagne to the other passengers in first class, a banker in 1F, an elderly couple in 2A and 2B, and a tech CEO in 1C. She pointedly skipped Chloe. Chloe waited. 10 minutes passed. Everyone else had a crystal flute of champagne or orange juice. Chloe's throat was dry. When Brenda passed by again, holding a silver tray with hot towels, Chloe cleared her throat. "Excuse me," Chloe said softly. "Could I please have some water?" Brenda stopped. She looked down at Chloe as if she were a bug on the windshield of a luxury car. "We are currently servicing priority customers. I'll get to you when I have time." I am a priority customer," Chloe said, her voice trembling slightly but holding firm. "I'm in first class. Ticket upgrades and employee non-revs don't get the full service until we're in the air," Brenda lied again. "Company policy." From across the aisle, the man in 1F, a distinguished-looking gentleman with silver hair named Mr. Henderson, lowered his newspaper. He had been watching the interactions since Chloe boarded. "Excuse me, miss," Mr. Henderson said, his voice booming and authoritative. "I believe the young lady asked for water, and I've flown Crown Atlantic for 20 years. I've never heard of a policy that denies service to a seated first-class passenger." Brenda's face flushed a blotchy red. She turned her fake smile toward Mr. Henderson. "Mr. Henderson, so good to see you again. I assure you, I'm just managing the workflow. But if you insist..." She turned back to the galley, returning moments later with a plastic cup of lukewarm tap water. She slammed it down on Chloe's side table. Water sloshed over the rim, splashing onto Chloe's jeans and the expensive leather armrest. "Oops," Brenda said, her face completely deadpan. "Turbulence on the ground. Clean that up, will you?" She walked away before Chloe could respond. Chloe grabbed a napkin and dabbed at her jeans. She felt tears pricking the corners of her eyes. "Don't cry," she told herself. "Do not let her see you cry." She was a black girl in a space that wasn't designed for her, and she knew the stereotypes that were waiting to be weaponized against her if she raised her voice. She had to be perfect. The plane eventually pushed back from the gate. The safety video played. The engines roared to life. As they taxied to the runway, Chloe closed her eyes and prayed for the flight to go quickly. 7 hours. She just had to survive 7 hours. Once they reached cruising altitude, the seatbelt sign pinged off. The cabin grew busy with the sounds of silverware clinking and laughter. The smell of roasted chicken and truffle oil wafted through the air. Dinner service. Chloe was starving. She hadn't eaten since breakfast. Brenda and Liam came down the aisle with the meal cart. They served Mr. Henderson the filet mignon. They served the tech CEO the lobster thermidor. When they got to Chloe, Brenda stopped the cart. She looked at her clipboard, then at Chloe. "What would you like?" Chloe asked, looking at the menu card. "The pasta looks... We're out of meals," Brenda interrupted. Chloe blinked. "What?" "We didn't load enough meals for the extra passengers," Brenda said, loud enough for the rows behind them to hear. We only have meals for the full-fare customers." "I have a full-fare ticket," Chloe said, her frustration finally beginning to bubble over. "My godfather paid full price for this seat." "Likely story," Brenda muttered under her breath. She reached into the bottom of the cart and pulled out a small, foil-wrapped package. She tossed it onto Chloe's tray table. "Here, a snack box from economy, pretzels and a cheese spread. Be grateful we have that." "This is unacceptable," Chloe said, her voice rising. "You took my bag. You spilled water on me. Now you're refusing to feed me. I want to speak to the purser." "I am the purser for this cabin," Brenda snapped, leaning in, invading Chloe's personal space. Her perfume was overpowering, sickly sweet. "And I suggest you lower your voice, young lady, before I have you restrained for unruly behavior. You are disrupting the peace of these premium passengers." "She's not disrupting anything," Mr. Henderson interjected again. He looked furious. "You are the one causing a scene, Brenda. Give her my meal. I'm not hungry." "I can't do that, sir," Brenda said, her eyes flashing. "Sanitary regulations." "This is harassment," Chloe said, her hands shaking. She reached for the call button on her armrest to summon another flight attendant. Maybe someone from the other aisle. Brenda's hand shot out and slapped Chloe's hand away from the button. It was a sharp, stinging contact. The cabin went silent. Physical contact. A line had been crossed. Chloe pulled her hand back, clutching it to her chest. She looked at Brenda in shock. Brenda seemed to realize she had gone too far, but instead of retreating, she doubled down. Panic and ego mixed in her eyes. "Don't you dare touch the equipment with those sticky hands," Brenda yelled, losing control. "You people think you can just waltz in here and do whatever you want. I know you didn't buy this ticket. I bet you stole a credit card. I'm going to have the police waiting for you in London." Chloe stood up. She was tall for her age, and she stood her ground. "I didn't steal anything," Chloe said, her voice remarkably calm now that the worst had happened. "But you just assaulted a minor." "Sit down," Brenda screamed. "Sit down, or I will divert this plane and have you thrown off." "Do it," Chloe challenged. "What did you say to me?" Brenda hissed. "I said, do it. Divert the plane." Chloe reached into her pocket. She realized her phone was still there. She hadn't put it in the bag Brenda stole. "Put that phone away." Brenda lunged for it. Chloe stepped back into the aisle, dodging Brenda's grasp. She unlocked her screen. She didn't open the camera app. She didn't open Instagram. She opened her contacts and scrolled to a name saved as Uncle Marcus, Board of Directors. But she didn't call him. That would be too slow. Instead, she dialed a different number. A number Marcus had made her memorize for absolute emergencies only. It was a direct line, not to customer service, not to the police. It was the direct encrypted line to the Global Operations Center of Crown Atlantic Airways. Brenda was shouting now, calling for Liam to bring the zip ties. "Restrain her. She's a threat to the flight." Passengers were standing up. Mr. Henderson was unbuckling his seatbelt to intervene. Chloe put the phone to her ear. It rang once, twice. "Global Ops, Director Vance speaking." A deep voice answered instantly. "Director Vance," Chloe said, her voice cutting through Brenda's screaming like a razor. "This is Chloe Harrison. Authorization code Alpha 90 Zulu 7. I am on flight 294. I am being physically assaulted by a crew member. I need you to ground this plane." Brenda froze. She heard the words. She heard the code. The color drained from her face so fast it looked like she had seen a ghost. "Who are you talking to?" Brenda whispered, her hands trembling. Chloe didn't answer her. She looked Brenda dead in the eye and spoke into the phone. "Did you copy that, Director?" "Copy, Miss Harrison," the voice on the phone said, sounding alarmed. "We are tracking your transponder. I'm patching in the captain immediately. Stay on the line." The silence in the first-class cabin was absolute, heavy, and suffocating. It wasn't the silence of peace, it was the silence of a held breath before an explosion. Every passenger in the first 3 rows was twisted in their seats, staring at the 17-year-old girl standing in the aisle with a phone pressed to her ear. Brenda St. James stood frozen, her hand still raised in the air where she had attempted to snatch the device. Her face was a mask of confusion, warring with indignation. She had heard the code, Alpha 9 Zulu 7, but her brain refused to process it. That was a board-level security clearance code. It was a code reserved for the families of the majority shareholders, the people who owned the very steel Brenda was standing on. It was impossible. This girl in the hoodie? This girl with the attitude? Brenda's prejudices were fighting a losing battle against reality. "I'm still here, Director," Chloe said into the phone, her eyes locked on Brenda's. Her voice was shaking now, the adrenaline crash beginning to set in, but she didn't look away. "The flight attendant's name is Brenda St. James. She has my bag. She physically struck my hand, and she has publicly humiliated me for the last 40 minutes. On the other end of the line, inside the nerve center of Crown Atlantic's global operations in Atlanta, Director Vance was typing furiously. He signaled his deputy to patch him directly into the cockpit of Flight 294. "Chloe," Vance said, his voice calm and paternal, "listen to me closely. You are safe. We are logging this incident as a Level 1 security breach. We are not just grounding the plane. We are recalling the crew. Do not engage with her further. Sit down. We are taking over." "Okay," Chloe whispered. "Thank you." She hung up the phone. She slowly lowered herself back into seat Janhornaway. Brenda blinked, her trance breaking. The fear in her chest was quickly replaced by a surge of defensive anger. She couldn't let this teenager win. It was a bluff. It had to be a bluff. "Who was that?" Brenda demanded, her voice shrill. "You can't just make phone calls during flight. That's a federal offense. Interfering with a flight crew." "I'd stop talking if I were you," Mr. Henderson warned from across the aisle. He had his phone out now, recording. "You're digging your own grave, Brenda." "Mind your business, Mr. Henderson," Brenda snapped. She turned back to Chloe. "I'm going to write you up. I'm going to have the marshals waiting. You think you can scare me with some fake code words?" Suddenly, the overhead chime dinged. Bing bong. It wasn't the soft chime for a passenger call. It was the triple chime, the signal for the flight crew to pick up the interphone immediately. Brenda glared at Chloe one last time before snatching the interphone handset from the wall cradle near the galley. "Cabin, Brenda speaking," she said, her tone aggressive. "Brenda, this is Captain Miller," the pilot's voice came through, but it wasn't on the private loop. He had accidentally, or perhaps intentionally, left the PA system on for a split second before switching, so the first few words boomed through the cabin speakers before clicking to the handset. "Come to the cockpit, now," Miller said. His voice was ice cold. "Captain, I'm in the middle of a situation with a disruptive passenger," Brenda said, trying to regain control of the narrative. "I need you to authorize a restraint order." "I said come to the cockpit, Brenda," Miller barked. "And bring the other purser. Leave the girl alone." The line clicked dead. Brenda stared at the handset. Her hands were starting to sweat. She looked at Liam, the junior attendant, who was cowering near the coffee maker. "You watch her," Brenda ordered Liam. "Don't let her move." Brenda marched to the front, punched in the cockpit code, and slipped inside. Inside the flight deck, the atmosphere was tense. Captain David Miller, a veteran pilot with 20 years of experience, was looking at a message printed on the ACARS screen, the text communication system pilots use to talk to the ground. The message read, "Critical. IMED divert boss. FLT 294. Orth, CEO Sterling. Crew suspension, pending. Police wreck gate. Captain Miller turned in his seat to face Brenda. He took off his headset. "What did you do?" Miller asked quietly. "Me?" Brenda put a hand to her chest, feigning shock. "I didn't do anything. It's that girl in 1A. She's a menace. She's stealing. She's shouting. She refused to follow instructions regarding stowage." "Brenda," the captain cut her off. "I just got a direct order from Alexander Sterling's office." Brenda's mouth fell open. Alexander Sterling, the CEO of Crown Atlantic, the billionaire who had bought the airline 3 years ago and turned it around. "Mr. Sterling?" Brenda squeaked. "The passenger in 1A. The captain looked at the manifest on his iPad. "Is Chloe Harrison. Do you know who that is?" "No," Brenda stammered. She just looked like a—" "She is Marcus Sterling's goddaughter," the captain said, rubbing his temples. "Alexander Sterling's brother. You just assaulted the niece of the owner of this airline." The blood drained from Brenda's face so completely that she looked like a wax figure. The cockpit spun. I didn't know," she whispered. "She was wearing a hoodie. She looked like a target to you," the captain said with disgust. "We are diverting to Boston. We are dumping fuel. You are to go back into that cabin, sit in the jump seat, and not say a single word to anyone. If you even look at Miss Harrison, I will have you charged with mutiny on top of assault. Get out of my cockpit." Brenda stumbled out of the cockpit. She felt like she was underwater. She walked past the first-class cabin. She didn't look at Chloe. She couldn't. She went straight to the jump seat near the front door, strapped herself in, and stared blankly at the wall. The plane suddenly banked sharply to the left. The engine noise changed pitch. The smooth hum of cruising altitude was replaced by the feeling of descent. The PA system crackled to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Miller from the flight deck. We have been ordered by company headquarters to divert immediately to Boston Logan International Airport due to a personnel security incident on board. We apologize for the inconvenience. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. Flight attendants, prepare the cabin for immediate arrival." The cabin erupted in murmurs. "Personnel security incident? What does that mean? Are we in danger?" Chloe sat in 1A, clutching her hands together. She wasn't triumphant. She was shaking. She just wanted to go home. Mr. Henderson leaned across the aisle. "You did the right thing, kid," he said softly. "Don't you worry about a thing." Chloe nodded, tears finally spilling over. She looked out the window as the clouds broke, revealing the coastline of Massachusetts below. The Karma hadn't just hit. It was coming in for a landing, and it was bringing the whole world with it. The descent into Boston was aggressive. The aircraft, a massive machine designed for long-haul comfort, felt heavy and urgent as it cut through the summer sky. Usually, a landing is a gradual, gentle process. This was a tactical maneuver. The speed brakes on the wings were deployed, causing the plane to shudder and rumble, a physical manifestation of the turmoil inside the cabin. In seat 1A, Chloe Harrison wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her hoodie. She had stopped crying, but the aftershocks of the adrenaline were making her teeth chatter. She pulled her knees up slightly, trying to make herself small. She felt the eyes of the other passengers on her. Some were sympathetic, like Mr. Henderson. Others, further back, who hadn't seen the incident, were craning their necks, whispering, wondering if she was the security threat the captain had mentioned. That was the insidious thing about what Brenda had done. Even now, as the victim, Chloe felt like the criminal. She worried about what would happen when they landed. Would the police believe her? Or would they believe the woman in the uniform? Brenda sat in the forward jump seat, facing the passengers. She was legally required to be there for landing safety, but it was a torture of its own. She had to look directly at the first-class cabin. She stared at a spot on the carpet, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. Her mind was racing, trying to construct a defense. She was aggressive. I felt threatened. I was just following protocol. It was a misunderstanding. But deep down, Brenda knew. She knew the moment she had slapped that hand, she had ended her life as she knew it. "Cabin crew, seats for landing," Captain Miller's voice boomed. The wheels dropped with a heavy thud clunk, locking into place. The ground rushed up to meet them. The runway at Logan Airport was a grey strip amidst the green grass and blue water of the bay. The tires screeched against the tarmac, smoke puffing from the rubber as the reverse thrusters roared, throwing the passengers forward against their seatbelts. The plane slowed rapidly, exiting the runway not toward the passenger gates, but toward a remote section of the tarmac, usually reserved for private jets and cargo. Chloe looked out the window. She gasped. There wasn't just a jet bridge waiting. There was a convoy, 3 black SUVs with tinted windows, 2 airport police cruisers with lights flashing silently, and a sleek silver sedan that looked out of place among the utility vehicles. The plane came to a halt. The fasten seatbelt sign remained illuminated. The engines spooled down to a high-pitched whine. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened," Captain Miller announced. "We have authorities boarding the aircraft. Please keep the aisle clear." The tension in the cabin was palpable. You could hear a pin drop. The forward cabin door opened. The rush of outside air and the sound of ground power units filled the space. 2 police officers in high-visibility vests entered first. They were big men, serious and focused. Officer O'Malley and Officer Diaz. They scanned the cabin. Brenda unbuckled her jump seat harness and stood up, smoothing her skirt. She put on her most professional, albeit shaky, face. She stepped toward the officers. "Officers," Brenda said, her voice trembling slightly. "Thank God you're here. The passenger in 1A has been completely unmanageable. She threatened the crew, Officer O'Malley didn't even look at her. He walked right past her, his shoulder brushing hers as if she were a piece of furniture. He walked straight to seat 1A. Chloe stiffened. She pressed her back into the leather seat. Officer O'Malley knelt down on one knee in the aisle, bringing himself to Chloe's eye level. His expression softened instantly. "Miss Harrison?" he asked gently. "Yes?" Chloe whispered. "I'm Sergeant O'Malley, Massachusetts State Police. We're here to get you off this plane. You're not in any trouble, okay? Your uncle has people waiting outside for you." Chloe let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for an hour. "Okay. Do you have any carry-on items?" O'Malley asked. "My backpack," Chloe pointed toward the galley. She took it. Brenda took it." O'Malley stood up. He turned slowly to face Brenda, who was standing by the door, her mouth agape. The color had not returned to her face. "Ma'am," O'Malley said, his voice hard as granite. "Where is Miss Harrison's bag?" I stowed it," Brenda stammered. "It was flight safety. Retrieve it. Now." Brenda scrambled to the back of the first-class galley, opening a closet where she had spitefully shoved the vintage leather bag under a pile of trash bags. She pulled it out and handed it to the officer. O'Malley handed the bag to Chloe. "Check it, please. Is everything there?" Chloe unzipped it. Laptop, sketchbook, meds. "Yes, it's all here." "Good. Come with me." Chloe stood up. As she walked toward the door, escorted by the police, the entire first-class cabin did something unexpected. Mr. Henderson started it. He began to clap. Then the woman in 2B clapped. Then the tech CEO. Within seconds, the first few rows were applauding. It wasn't a celebration of the landing. It was a show of solidarity, a rejection of what they had witnessed. Chloe managed a weak, grateful smile at Mr. Henderson as she passed. She stepped out onto the metal stairs that had been rolled up to the plane. The sun was bright. Standing at the bottom of the stairs, leaning against the silver sedan, was a man in a sharp grey suit. He was holding a phone. It wasn't her godfather, Marcus. It was someone even more terrifying for the airline employees. It was Alexander Sterling, the CEO. He had been in Boston for a conference and had rushed to the tarmac the moment the call came in from Global Ops. He watched Chloe descend the stairs, his face grim. But the scene on the plane wasn't over. Back inside, Brenda watched Chloe leave. She let out a nervous laugh. Well, good. Now that the disruption is gone, we can refuel and— Brenda St. James, Officer Diaz spoke up. He was standing right in front of her, holding a pair of handcuffs. Brenda froze. Excuse me? You are under arrest for assault on a minor, theft, and interference with a flight crew, Diaz recited, his tone bored but efficient. Turn around and place your hands behind your back. You can't be serious, Brenda shrieked. I'm the senior in-flight manager. You can't arrest me. I was doing my job. She's a brat. Turn around, Diaz ordered, grabbing her wrist. He spun her around. The click of the handcuffs echoed through the silent cabin. Liam, Brenda screamed at the junior flight attendant. Call the union. Call my rep. This is illegal. Liam looked at her, then looked at the floor. I saw you hit her, Brenda, he said quietly. I'm not calling anyone. The officers marched Brenda out of the plane. She was paraded down the same stairs Chloe had just walked down. From the tarmac, Chloe watched. She was standing next to Alexander Sterling now. The CEO placed a hand on her shoulder. I am so incredibly sorry, Chloe, Sterling said. Marcus is on his way from New York, but I wanted to be here personally. This is unforgivable. Chloe watched Brenda being shoved into the back of a police cruiser. The woman who had looked so powerful, so untouchable just an hour ago, now looked small and pathetic, weeping in the back of a squad car. Is she going to jail? Chloe asked. For a long time, Sterling said darkly. But that's just the beginning. I'm grounding this entire fleet for a mandatory personnel review. Nobody treats a passenger like that on my airline, ever. Sterling turned to his assistant. Get the press release ready. We aren't hiding this. We are owning it. And get the legal team. I want Brenda St. James's pension frozen pending the investigation. He looked back at Chloe. Come on, let's get you some real food. And I think we can find a better way to get you to London than Flight 294. As Chloe got into the silver sedan, she looked back at the plane one last time. The massive machine sat idle, engines off, defeated. One girl, one phone call, and the giant had been brought to its knees. But the story wasn't over. The video Mr. Henderson had recorded. He had just hit upload on Twitter. And while the police were dealing with Brenda, the internet was about to deal with Crown Atlantic Airways. While Chloe was being whisked away in a private convoy to the presidential suite of the Mandarin Oriental in Boston, a different kind of storm was brewing. It wasn't atmospheric. It was digital, and it moved faster than any jet engine. Mr. Henderson, the silver-haired businessman from Seat 1F, had a modest Twitter following, mostly colleagues in the banking sector and a few golf buddies. But the video he uploaded, titled Racism and Assault on Crown Atlantic Flight 294, didn't stay in that circle. The video was damning. It was clear, high-definition footage of Brenda screaming, I know you didn't buy this ticket. I bet you stole a credit card. It captured the slap. It captured Chloe's terrifyingly calm response. And it captured the moment the captain's voice boomed over the intercom ordering Brenda to the cockpit. Within 20 minutes of the upload, a popular social justice activist with 3 million followers retweeted it. Watch this power-tripping flight attendant assault a black teenage girl who was just trying to sit in her assigned seat. Crown Atlantic explained this. Now, the internet exploded. By the time Brenda was being fingerprinted at the Massachusetts State Police Station at Logan Airport, the hashtag #Flight294 was the #1 trending topic in the United States. By the time her mugshot was taken, her mascara smeared, her hair frizzy, her face a portrait of misery, it was trending worldwide. Inside the interrogation room, Brenda sat alone. The metal table was cold. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. She had been stripped of her uniform jacket and scarf. She was just a woman in a wrinkled white blouse, shivering. She still didn't understand the magnitude of what was happening. In her mind, this was a misunderstanding that she could smooth over. She was a senior in-flight manager. She had 30 years of service. She had union protection. The door opened. It wasn't a lawyer. It was Officer Diaz, looking even more bored than before. "You get one phone call," Diaz said. Brenda scrambled for the phone. She didn't call her husband. He had been telling her to retire for years, and she couldn't bear his "I told you so." She called her union representative, a man named Gary. "Gary," Brenda cried when he picked up. "Thank God, you have to get down here. They arrested me. A passenger, some bratty teenager, provoked a situation, and the police are acting like I'm a criminal. You need to file a grievance immediately." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Brenda," Gary's voice was tight, strained. "Have you seen the news?" "I'm in a jail cell, Gary. I haven't seen anything." "It's everywhere," Gary said. "There's video. Henderson took video. Millions of people have seen you slap that girl. They've seen you screaming at her." It was out of context," Brenda stammered, her stomach dropping. "There is no context for hitting a passenger, Brenda," Gary snapped. "I've been on the phone with the National Union Board for the last hour. We're getting death threats at the office because of you." So what are you doing to get me out?" "Nothing," Gary said. Brenda froze. "What?" "We are not sending a lawyer," Gary said, his voice cold. "The union is disavowing you. Clause 14, Section B of your contract. Any employee engaged in verifiable physical assault or criminal acts against passengers forfeits immediate representation." "You're on your own, Brenda. Don't call this number again." The line went dead. Brenda stared at the receiver. The dial tone hummed in her ear, a lonely, mechanical sound. For the first time in 30 years, she was completely, utterly alone. The institution she had hidden behind, the seniority she had used as a shield, it had all evaporated in the span of a 3-minute video clip. Meanwhile, at the Mandarin Oriental, the atmosphere was very different. Alexander Sterling had arranged for a team of trauma counselors and assistants to be available for Chloe, but all she really wanted was her mum. The door to the suite flew open, and Marcus Sterling, her godfather, strode in. He looked like a man who had just run a marathon in a suit. He was followed closely by Chloe's mother, Sarah, who had been flown in on a private helicopter from New York. "Chloe!" Sarah screamed, running across the plush carpet. Chloe collapsed into her mother's arms, finally letting go of the brave face she had worn for hours. She sobbed into her mum's shoulder. "I'm sorry, Mom," Chloe cried. "I caused so much trouble." "You didn't cause anything," Marcus said, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. He walked over and kissed Chloe on the forehead. "You were perfect. You were brave. And that woman is going to regret the day she was born." Marcus turned to Alexander Sterling, who was standing by the window, watching the news on a muted TV. "Alex," Marcus said, "tell me it's handled." "The stock is down 4% in after-hours trading," Alexander said, turning around. "Advertisers are pulling out. The internet is calling for a boycott of the airline unless we make a public example of her." "Good," Marcus said. "Give them what they want." "We are," Alexander said. "But it gets worse for Brenda. The internet sleuths. They've been digging." He picked up a tablet and handed it to Marcus. "People started recognizing her," Alexander explained. "Previous passengers. Look at this thread." Marcus scrolled. "Ex-traveler Jen. Oh my God, that's Brenda. She was on my flight to Paris last year. She threatened to kick my autistic son off the plane because he was making weird noises. She's a monster." "Quanta business flyer, I know her. She spilled hot coffee on my wife intentionally when we asked for an extra pillow. We complained, but the airline said it was an accident." Flight 294. Our crew life anonymous. "I flew with Brenda for years. She used to brag about putting people in their place. She targets anyone she thinks doesn't belong in first class. We all hated her but were too scared to report her." "It's a pattern," Marcus said, his eyes narrowing. "She's been doing this for years." "And we missed it," Alexander admitted, looking ashamed. "The complaints were buried in customer service resolution files. She was good at covering her tracks, but not today. Today, she messed with the wrong family." Alexander looked at Chloe, who was sitting on the sofa, drinking hot chocolate her mum had made her. "Chloe," Alexander said gently, "the police need a formal statement, but you don't have to do it alone. We have the best lawyers in the country waiting outside. You tell them the truth, and we handle the rest." Chloe nodded. She looked at her phone. Her Instagram notifications were broken, stuck at 99 plus. She had gained 200,000 followers in 3 hours. People were calling her a hero, a symbol of grace under pressure. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a witness, and she was ready to testify. The following morning, the sun rose over Boston, but for Brenda St. James, it was the darkest day of her life. She had spent the night in a holding cell. No sleep, no coffee, just the smell of disinfectant and the echo of other prisoners shouting. At 9:02 a.m., she was transferred to an interrogation room. This time, across the table sat 2 people, a severe-looking woman from the district attorney's office named Ms. Gable and a man in a sharp blue suit named Mr. Thorne. Mr. Thorne was the head of legal for Crown Atlantic Airways. Brenda straightened up when she saw Thorne, a flicker of hope. "Mr. Thorne, finally. Look, you have to explain to them. I have seniority. This is an internal matter." Thorne opened his briefcase. He didn't look at her. He pulled out a single sheet of paper and slid it across the metal table. "Miss St. James," Thorne said, his voice devoid of emotion. "This is your notice of termination, effective immediately. It is signed by Alexander Sterling, personally." Brenda stared at the paper. "Termination? You can't just fire me. There has to be a hearing, a tribunal." "There was a hearing," Thorne said. "Last night, the board of directors convened an emergency session. Given the video evidence, the witness statements from the captain and the crew, and the police report, the decision was unanimous. You are fired for gross misconduct." "But my pension," Brenda whispered. "I have 30 years. My retirement." "That's the second document." Thorne slid another paper across. "Crown Atlantic is suing you for damages to the brand and breach of contract. We are freezing your pension assets pending the outcome of the civil litigation, and since you violated the zero-tolerance violence policy, your accumulated benefits are null and void." Brenda felt like she couldn't breathe. "You're taking everything?" "You cost the airline $60 million in market value in 12 hours, Thorne said coldly. "You grounded a transatlantic flight. You assaulted the CEO's niece. Frankly, Brenda, you're lucky we aren't suing you for the fuel costs of the diversion." Ms. Gable, the prosecutor, leaned forward. "And that brings us to the criminal charges. Assault and battery on a minor, unlawful imprisonment, interference with a flight crew. I'm looking at 3 to 5 years in state prison, Brenda." Brenda put her head in her hands and began to sob. Not the soft crying of a victim, but the ugly, gasping sobs of someone who realizes the walls have closed in. "I didn't know who she was," Brenda wailed. "If I had known she was a sterling—" "That," Ms. Gable interrupted, "is exactly the problem. You thought she was nobody, so you treated her like garbage. You only care now because she has power. That doesn't make you innocent. It makes you a predator." While Brenda was facing the end of her life, the investigation at the airline headquarters was unearthing the rot she had left behind. Alexander Sterling ordered a full audit of the priority bin complaints. The IT department ran a search for Brenda's employee ID. They found something disturbing. Over the last 5 years, Brenda had flagged over 50 passengers for suspicious behavior or carry-on violations. 90% of them were people of color. 90% of them were in first class or business class. Liam, the junior flight attendant, was called in for questioning. He was terrified, sitting in the plush boardroom. "Tell us about the bag," Alexander Sterling asked him. "Why did she take Chloe's backpack?" Liam swallowed hard. She has a side deal. Or a habit, I don't know." "Speak up, son," Marcus urged. "She keeps the overhead bins in row 1 empty," Liam confessed. "She tells passengers they are for equipment. Then she sells the space to passengers in row 2 or 3 who have extra bags. They slip her cash, $50, $100, and she lets them put their stuff up front. She calls it her overhead tax." Alexander slammed his fist on the table. "She was running a shakedown racket in my first-class cabin?" "Yes, sir," Liam whispered. "And when Chloe boarded, Brenda was mad because she had already promised that bin space to the guy in 1C. She needed Chloe's bag gone so she could fulfill her deal." The room went silent. It wasn't just racism. It was greed. Petty, small-minded greed. She had humiliated a teenage girl, assaulted her, and grounded a plane, all because she wanted to make an extra $50 selling bin space that wasn't hers to sell. "That's it," Alexander said, standing up. "I want that released to the press. Everything. The pattern of discrimination, the theft, the bribery. I want the world to know exactly who Brenda St. James is." "It will hurt our reputation," the PR director warned, "admitting we had a crook on staff." "It cleanses the wound," Alexander corrected. "It shows we are hiding nothing. Release it." By that evening, the story had shifted. It was no longer just about a racist outburst. It was about the fall of a corrupt tyrant. The news channels ran special reports on the bullying culture of the skies. Chloe, watching from her hotel room, saw the update on CNN. The anchor spoke gravely. "New revelations in the Flight 294 scandal. Disgraced flight attendant Brenda St. James was allegedly running an illegal scheme to sell overhead bin space, targeting minority passengers to clear room for paying bribers. Prosecutors say this adds a layer of fraud to the assault charges." Chloe turned off the TV. She looked at her sketchbook. She picked up a pencil. She started to draw. Not a dress, but a uniform. A new airline uniform. Stylish, modern, inclusive. "What are you doing?" her mom asked. "I'm designing," Chloe said, a small smile returning to her face. "Uncle Alex said he wants to rebrand. I think I have some ideas." The karma was complete. Brenda had tried to crush Chloe's spirit and steal her space. Instead, Brenda had lost her career, her freedom, and her name. while Chloe was about to leave her mark on the very industry Brenda had claimed to own. 6 months later, the winter wind whipped against the windows of the Suffolk County Courthouse, but inside courtroom 4B, the heat was suffocating. The gallery was packed with reporters, cameras, and former passengers who had suffered under Brenda's tyranny. Brenda St. James sat at the defendant's table, a ghost of her former self. Gone was the pristine uniform and the sneer of authority. She wore a drab, ill-fitting grey suit, her hair pulled back in a messy knot, looking 20 years older. Across the aisle, Chloe Harrison sat like royalty. She was flanked by her mother and the Sterlings. Chloe wore a sharp, emerald-green blazer, one of her own designs. She didn't look angry. She looked ready. Judge Evelyn Moore, a stern woman who brooked no nonsense, adjusted her glasses and looked down at Brenda. The trial had been swift. The video evidence, Liam's testimony about the bin tax scheme, and the sheer volume of past complaints had made the defense crumble. "Brenda St. James, please stand," Judge Moore ordered. Brenda stood, her legs trembling violently. "You have been found guilty on all counts," the judge announced, her voice echoing through the silent room. "You abused your authority to terrorize a minor and disrupted the safety of an aircraft for your own petty greed. The court finds your actions reprehensible." Brenda let out a small, strangled sob. "On the count of interference with flight crew operations, I sentence you to 3 years in state prison," Judge Moore continued. "On the count of assault and battery, 1 year, to be served consecutively. You are also ordered to pay restitution of $15,000 to your victims." 4 years. Brenda's knees buckled, and she gripped the table for support. "Furthermore," the judge added, delivering the final blow, "as part of the civil settlement with Crown Atlantic, you are permanently placed on the federal no-fly list. You will never set foot on an airplane again." The bailiffs moved in. The click of handcuffs echoed in the room, a sound far louder than any shout. As she was led away, Brenda looked back at Chloe, searching for some reaction. But Chloe simply watched her with quiet pity. The woman who thought she owned the sky was now grounded forever. Outside the courthouse, Alexander Sterling faced the press. "Justice is served," he declared. "We are overhauling our culture, and I am proud to announce that Chloe Harrison is not just our scholarship recipient. She is the lead consultant for our new uniform redesign." Chloe stepped up to the mic, smiling. "We're going to make sure the uniform represents respect, not bullying." 3 months later, Chloe sat in seat 1A on a flight to London. The cabin was bright, and the flight attendant approached her wearing a chic charcoal and emerald uniform, Chloe's design. "Can I get you anything, Miss Harrison?" the attendant asked with a genuine smile. "I'm good," Chloe said, glancing at her backpack safely stowed in the overhead bin. She looked out the window as the plane banked upward, soaring freely into the clouds. Brenda was in a cell, Chloe was in the sky, and finally, the view was perfect. And that is how one entitled flight attendant lost her career, her pension, and her freedom, all because she judged a book by its cover. Brenda thought she could bully a teenager in a hoodie, never realizing that the girl held the power to ground the entire airline with a single phone call. It's a brutal lesson in karma. Treat everyone with respect, because you never know who you're talking to. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. I post dramatic tales of instant karma and twists every single week. What do you think? Did Brenda deserve 4 years in prison? Or was that too harsh? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. And that is how one entitled flight attendant lost her career, her pension, and her freedom, All because she judged a book by its cover. Brenda thought she could bully a teenager in a hoodie, never realizing that the girl held the power to ground the entire airline with a single phone call. It's a brutal lesson in karma. Treat everyone with respect, because you never know who you're talking to. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. I post dramatic tales of instant karma and twists every single week. What do you think? Did Brenda deserve 4 years in prison, or was that too harsh? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.